first of all, thanks a lot, and welcome to our community. Feel free to introduce yourself, and from there we will get it started.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thank you for the introduction, Nirvik. So I guess I can start with telling a little bit about myself and then the company that I co-founded. So I'm Paul. I say I've been a game developer for quite a while. I started making games in 2004, and this was around the time of this was pre-App Store. There were no App Stores then. Most of the games were that I made were on mobile, on the older phones, like the I don't know if anyone here remembers the feature phones where they didn't have touchscreens, they had keypads, and there were games there that were old school arcade games like Snake, Minesweeper, these kinds of games. I got started making games around that time, and since then I've been starting up a few companies, mostly focused on building games through digital means. So that means like the mobile app stores, in the app stores of the consoles, and through carriers, through wireless services in the carriers. So in 2007, also co-founder of Altitude Games, which is a mobile games developer based in Manila. And that's when we discovered blockchain and NFTs, because that was when CryptoKitties came out and when Ethereum was kind of becoming more discovered. So we kind of saw that technology. We realized that this could be a technology that can change how we pay and play games. So we just dove right in and started developing. So now we spun off that division of the company to focus more on helping game developers go on blockchain. So similar to us who don't know a lot about Web3, we want to be able to tell them how to find success in this space. So that company that I co-founded now is called OP Games. Our mission is really to help game developers who don't really appreciate a lot of what Web3 and the Metaverse are, introduce them to this new space. We feel that there's a lot that can be done here. We do need to hindsight of knowing what worked before in games, and I think that's something that we uniquely are able to help them out. So I'm looking forward to having this discussion on Web3 and the Metaverse.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Thanks a lot for that introduction. And I personally know you since first interaction was through battle races. And we have been in contact since then. We have not spoken much, but we've been in touch. And I know your contribution has been very valuable in the ecosystem, and you're still contributing, helping devs to get started. So I appreciate that, and thanks a lot for joining us today.
And Nirvik, maybe I can tell a little bit about Battle Racers now that you mentioned it. I mentioned that I had a company called Altitude Games. Altitude Games was the company who made Battle Racers. So I was the part of the team who made the smart contracts, who made the integrations with Decentraland, for example. So very, very early days. It was one of the earlier games on Decentraland. It was one of the earliest games, the NFT sales as well. So we've seen that model hasn't traditionally been seen with some other independent game developers. So that's something that we really wanted to help people out on. But thank you for that shout out, Nirvik, on Battle Racers.
Thank you. I think you guys were pretty early in the game. I mean, like, people were just transiting from Web 2 to Web 3, but you were way ahead in that, and you were building game in a metaverse, right? So you guys were ahead of the space. And I think definitely people will see that as an example, and they will learn a lot of things from you, Battle Racers. So let's get started with the questions, right? Pretty excited with this one. Awesome. First question is, why Web3 and Metaverse is important for gaming today? Why do you think moving to Web3 for a game could be very important, right?
We want to talk about Web3 and the Metaverse, right? And when people say the Metaverse, I know a lot of it is still very nebulous. People, sometimes when you say Metaverse, sometimes people will say it's like VR, right? It's like the next step of what we're playing. People will go into the game themselves, and it will be like another reality on top of our own. But how I see it as a game developer who's been in the space is the Metaverse has been here already in the past few years, or even in the past few decades, I would say. It's just not very evenly distributed. An example that I ask people to take a look at is, of course, Steam and the virtual items that you see on Steam. There's this great talk, Yanis Varoufakis. He used to be the chief economist of Valve, and the Greek finance minister. And he said that the Metaverse actually existed way before. When Valve was making virtual items, they kind of realized that what they were building was almost like like a new economy, right? Like people were trading items, people were able to make a living out of trading and buying these items. So they knew that there was the genesis of something like the metaverse already happening there. Something to mention is if you look at the metaverse in that lens, the metaverse has been here for quite a while. And like for example, when people talk about NFTs and putting them in your games, an early iteration of that has already been going on in the earlier versions of the metaverse. So now what's changing, I feel, is the narrative around Web3. So Web3, when we say Web3, is it's a blanket of technologies, which includes blockchain, of course, and NFTs, but also other things that allow us to decentralize technology or decentralize power away from Web2. So it includes IPFS, remote decentralized storage, DAOs, of course, and a lot of other technologies that are coming up soon. So I would say Web3 is a good way to take a look at this is Web3 is more of a social movement. It's about a movement about decentralizing power away from the centralized Web2 platforms that we're all used to using. So when we say Web2 platforms, the one that comes to mind, of course, is Facebook and Meta, wherein the VR world will centralize around Meta. And another example is Google, where everything, all the services we use are based around Google. So Web3 kind of reimagines that. What can we do if the services that we use are all decentralized? So having said that, it's hard, of course, right? Like the reason that these things are centralized is because it makes it easy for us to use them. So with Web3, we want to make it decentralized. Anyone can use it. We're free to take our data wherever we want, but that's still a ways away. But as I said, Web3 is a social movement. It's us taking power back for ourselves. So I think that's really why this movement is very important. Because we need to realize that how much agency we've lost from Web2, and we need to be able to get that back using the tools and this movement behind us.
Awesome. I think you have articulated right manner. Overall, the understanding and the trust that we have lost, right, with the centralized services, and although it makes the user experience playable right now, but I think moving towards more of a decentralized future where you can play games and interact with games and own the items, right? Own the progress that you make in the game.
Exactly.
I think that would be owning your data, right? I think that would be something pretty impressive and to see how it all progresses. But yeah, definitely the future seems bright on the Web3 side, right? So you articulated it very rightly.
Thank
The
you.
next one,
and that's precisely right. It's all about the data. It's all about us being in control. So
exactly. Okay. So we owning our data, right? That is important. I think this decentralization movement will probably change how we think, how we perceive information. Because right now people play games and they are accustomed to this notion that they are playing a game and they can't probably sell items. But now it is changing. They can sell their progress, they can sell their data, they can own their data, and they can give it to anyone who is ready to buy their NFTs to basically transfer the assets, which are in-game assets, basically, right? So we'll see a change, and I think we are just getting started in this moment. The next question: how do you think Play to Earn is helping or changing or impacting the overall gaming space, which includes even Web2 games?
When we talk about Play to Earn, I think it's good for us to take a look at the segments that it's affecting, right? Of course, the first one is the players. And me, myself, I come from Manila, and I saw how Axie Infinity changed people's lives there. So this new movement in this side is able to really help players get value from the stuff that they're doing, right? Their time and attention is monetized. Having said that, term monetization is I would say it's a double-edged sword as well. Now that we're playing games and we know that we're able to monetize when we play games, everything has become very financialized, right? Like for example, if someone is playing Axie Infinity, you know that the reason that they're playing it is they're earning because it's play to earn, right? So we kind of have to consider that now. Like, is this a job, for example? So what does that mean in the context of this being a job. So if you're someone in Manila playing this game and you're earning X amount of pesos by playing this game, what does this mean also for example, for healthcare, right? What does it mean also for if are you an employee, for example? So a lot of these questions are being asked right now. So the, Pay to Earn has done a lot of good, but there's a lot of things also that we need to manage well, I would say. So we look at the player side, and if we look at the game developer side, which is, I guess, something I'm really exposed to. Because right now, especially in my space where I talk to a lot of independent game developers, a lot of them are very apprehensive around Pay to Earn. A lot of them have seen, for example, how games have become more financialized, as I mentioned. I said earlier that I've been making games since 2004. I would say then that when you're making a game, the reason you make a game is less about the money, right? It was more about how do you drive a narrative, how do you tell your story, how do you make a fun game. But now that, but when networks came around, then like our thinking kind of shifted a bit. Now that social networks are there, we want people to always stay on the game because we're kind of monetizing their attention via ads. So now the games are designed for you to stay there for a long time to grind, watch these ads. So the game developers are compensated. So you could see that games, how they were made, were changed because of that. And now that we've come to this era where it's about crypto, it's about financialized transactions, the game developers who've seen that happen in Web2 are of course, very apprehensive. They're like, this is probably just another way for these platforms to get money from us, right? So game developers, there's a lot of hostility, honestly, around Play to Earn. The good game developers, I really respect. I'm sad that they don't look at Web3 the same way that I do because of this aspect. So yeah, so that's affected game developers in that way. I think Play to Earn has good sides, it has bad sides. And one good thing though with Web3 is it's all very new. We're still defining what's going to happen in this space. So Play to Earn can become like Web2 if we're not mindful of what we're doing. So, but at least in Web3, we have people building with us who recognize that. So I talked with a lot of people like the platform cooperative people who have seen how Uber kind of changed from becoming a good platform to what it is now. So we need to take the learnings that we can from these other platforms, from these other industries, and change gaming for the better. I would say Play to Earn currently has done a lot of good for a lot of people, but it's still the first version. We need to make sure it does better. We need to make sure that people who rely on it aren't left hanging when everything doesn't work out the way that we want it to.
I think it will evolve over the period. I think what Play to Earn has done is basically it has created a movement, and now people are basically looking at games and they are exploring Web3 space because of this movement. I think for gamers also who are addicted or who are pro gamers, who are diehard gamers, whatever the term you can coin, but the people who love playing games, right? For them, it has become a gateway drug to Web3 space or to the gaming space in NFTs, Web3, right? And I think it will evolve over the period. But I agree to your point that it has changed the understanding, and it is slowly evolving into terms like is it to earn something, right? It digresses it a bit from the fun to more of doing something to earn something financial or monetary. And I think that urge is there in overall crypto ecosystem also, right? People generally hop into crypto space because they hear from people or they hear from media they can probably earn money while getting into crypto space, but that digresses them from the actual movement that is there, which is all about decentralization. Root cause is there. It's because of the human nature, how we perceive things, and I think it will stay there. But I think Play to Earn has helped us and overall ecosystem in terms of bringing these eyeballs, bringing these players, bringing the creators into the ecosystem. And I think it will, and we will see how it all evolves. And I think you you as a OG in the space in terms of gaming, we will learn a lot from you over the course. But
Yeah. Thank you. Very big. I think that's a good point. Like esports, of course, as you mentioned,
yes,
and getting people to understand more about Web3, start playing, and then eventually they realize that playing is just the first step. You can create games yourselves, right? So
yes,
that can be the better way. We want to. One thing that's notable to mention is Web2 was really about these companies controlling the means of production, right? And then once they started
yes,
controlling that, they extracted value from everyone who has no choice but to take part. But here in Web3, we can be the means of production. We can create it ourselves. So people have to go through that journey of being a player first, and then eventually they become the people who define how things will go.
definitely. So yeah, that brings me to the next question because we have been talking about decentralization and what degree of decentralization is required in gaming, or a model which was proposed by A16Z, which talks about progressive decentralization. How do you think it will impact in terms of developing the games? Because I understand that developing games is not an easy feat. You have a lot of tools which rely on centralized sources. So how do you think like it will overall impact, or what degree of decentralization is required at the very start, or it has to be completely decentralized on day one?
It's a good question. I think a lot of people have different opinions here. I see some games that really go hardcore on everything being decentralized, right? They call it unstoppable games, or games that are fully on chain. The concept is everything is open source, all of the transactions are on chain, so anyone can just call a smart contract and then they're playing the game. So that degree of decentralization is extreme, I would say. The challenge there is since the technologies that we're building are still not very mature, not everyone can use them. So the people that are going to be playing this game is only a limited subset of people. So in that case, then it might not be as successful as traditional gaming, right? So on the other end of not really on the other end of the spectrum, but in the middle, there are game developers like us who feel that there is some use for centralized servers still. I agree with progressive the decentralization because we need players to be playing the game, right? And or else there won't be nothing happening. There won't be any value being created. So, for example, just making a game, you need somewhere to host the servers, right? So that means there's going to be a little bit of centralization where people can play the games together. You can't expect everyone to put up their own Ethereum node, for example, for now. So we do need some sort of centralization around servers like Infura servers, even game servers where people can do the multiplayer games themselves. And also in terms of creating the games, right now a lot of game developers I know are creating it on an engine called Unity because Unity provides a lot of benefits. It's easy to use, and they've been building a lot of experience already on that for the past X years. But if you wanted to go fully decentralized, we'd use an open source game engine like Phaser, Default, Godot, these other engines, which I personally hope would happen is that these game engines will become strong alternatives to Unity, and so we can progressively decentralize away from that. Because there's one other thing worth mentioning is Unity. I would say it has become sort of like a Web2 centralized platform in itself because Unity, when you use it, the journey there for a game developer is most of the time leading you to build your game to use Unity ads. So that kind of has defined already the kind of game that you're gonna make, and also the value that you're gonna be earning will come from ads themselves. So that kind of defeats the purpose of building on Web3. So I guess to summarize there, the degree of decentralization required depends on the game that you want to make. I think we're not yet ready to make a fully decentralized game if we want to reach the players that will benefit from Web3. So there's gonna still be still some centralization around what we're building, mostly around servers, mostly around the tools that we're using. But over the next few years, if everything goes well, the hope is we decentralize them progressively. We'll start using open source game engines. we'll start putting our servers up on decentralized storage or maybe decentralized computational storage or decentralized computational power. And then yeah, maybe we'll have unstoppable games that are fully decentralized in the next maybe 5 to 10 years.
Got it. I agree to that point, and I think down the line, 5 years, 10 years, we'll see this movement. But yeah, I think we are still pretty early in terms of that, and I think for that period of time, progressive decentralization is gonna play a major role in terms of how people envision their roadmap in terms of building the games and taking their games to fully decentralized mode. By that time, I think by 5 years or 10 years, we will see this changing. The tooling which is required today to build the games will go probably decentralized or probably be built in a decentralized manner.
Yeah, I agree.
Awesome. So now that brings me to the next question, because we have talked about play to earn, we are talking about decentralization, and as we spoke that decentralization on day one could be not a good way to go about it. Maybe some level of decentralization or progressive decentralization could be the way to go ahead as of today, right? So, have you observed growth in Web3 gaming space after the emergence of concepts like play to earn, and then the games being built in Web3 space, which are focused towards decentralization, or the games which are following the ethos of Web3? Have you observed any growth or people tending more towards building a game in Web3? How the overall observation has been like?
Sure, yeah. I can speak about the number of game developers I've seen come into the space, and there has really been a growth, I would say. And what's nice is a lot of the growth is coming from the countries that have been traditionally disenfranchised. Like I see some game development companies starting out from Vietnam, from the Philippines, from Indonesia, who've seen what Web3 can do and really building on it, right? In terms of growth in players, I have seen a lot of growth as well. And what's nice is we're getting players who haven't traditionally been playing, right? In Axie Infinity, if you've seen the documentaries around Axie Infinity, some of these players they're playing these games for the first time. So we're seeing some growth there. I would say though that it's still not as much growth as what we need. For example, in mobile games, right? One mobile game can easily have millions of people playing it, and I don't think there's already a Web3 game that has that amount. Maybe Axie Infinity has, but not the others don't, right? So there's still a lot of growth that's happening, but I expect like in the next 1 to 2 years. Similar to what I saw in mobile, where there were only a few people playing, but as the technology evolved, it really went exponential. So I expect Web3 to go through the same growth trajectory, and I'm pretty sure it's coming soon because a lot of the companies are really looking at this now. Everyone's a lot of VCs like A16Z, as you mentioned, they're looking at how to scale this very quickly. So it's happening. The growth is going to happen very fast.
Got it. And I think you covered some of the parts that I wanted to cover in the next question. But I think you answered it pretty right. But would there be any last thoughts on the future of gaming in Web3? Although you have answered part of it, how do you think future of gaming will evolve, and where do you see it going? Yeah.
Sure, yeah. I talked a little bit about it. Is one thing I isn't hoping is going to happen is everything becomes too financialized. But I think that's happened with crypto, right? So I expect this is going to happen in gaming. Is a lot of the games that will be built initially will be focused on pay to earn, but at least now we've kind of realized that it's more than just pay to earn. It's more about what is the future of gameplay, what is the future of work also. So how I see the future with respect to Web3 is that games will start to be more democratically owned, I would say. For example, now if you have a game, the game design is only defined by the game designer. That's just one person there, or just a team building the game, right? It's very similar to how the social networks are designed. Yanis Varoufakis says that it's like techno feudalism, right, where the kings are the game designers and the players are just there to just be part. They're just not able to control what they, or their voices are not heard, right? For example, if someone makes a gacha game and where everything is so hard to get, then that's not really fair to everyone. So my hope and what I hope to see in the future in Web3 is that players will be part of the game development. Players will be owners as well of the game, and we'll probably see new genres, right? Like the games that we see now are still modeled from the games that we've been playing, and we'll start to see new kinds of games. We'll start to see games that maybe don't need your screen, maybe games that make you do other stuff outside of the virtual space. So a lot of things. I feel like the future is very wide open. I said that the Web3 is still being defined, and it's on us to make the games that we want to see in the space.
Thanks a lot, Paul. I think it has been pretty insightful session today, and our community has learned things about gaming is at the moment in terms of Web3, Metaverse, how things are colliding right now, and where are we right now. Thanks a lot for joining us.